Renner walked around Ramposa 3 to use the table to draw an easy-to-understand map on a piece of paper. It was a simple one, but now he would not have to worry about getting lost. Here is a hidden basement here. Please hide the items inside there. Yes. I will abide by your order. After you are done with this. Climb stared intently at Renner's face, hoping that she would not say something like, "Do not come back. Please let me stay by your side until the very end." Had his thoughts reached her? Renner spoke after a prolonged moment of hesitation. "Please do, return safely." While they were not certain where the Sorcerer's Kingdom's army had reached, it was highly likely that they had already broken into the capital, and were crawling all over the place. In that case, to leave this place was extremely risky. However, Climb would not hesitate. Since his master had ordered it, he must do as he was told. Yes. You must return unharmed. Do not try to fight. If you see an enemy, run with all of your might. Do you understand? It felt like she understood his resolve, but could not place much faith in his capabilities. Renner repeated herself again. Yes. Climb nodded his head heavily. At that point, it looked like Renner was finally relieved. Good. Now then, father. Given the current situation, it would be hard for him to make it out of the palace, so could you tell Climb? You wish for me to reveal the hidden passageways from the palace to the capital, correct? Yes. I understand. Let me tell him. After hearing the king's explanation, Climb was truly shocked. He had walked through that tunnel multiple times, yet had never detected the presence of those hidden pathways. Climb, it is fine even if you return a bit late. Could you remain cautious and not let these items fall into enemy hands? Of course, Renner-sama. I will complete my mission even if it is the last thing I do. After you have hidden the items, even if something worrying came up, do return here as fast as possible no matter the cost. Given the current situation, we do not know when the Sorcerer's Kingdom's army would arrive. While that sentence's structure was a bit different, she was probably just repeating herself to drill that idea into him. That showed how much she cared for him. So Climb, when to do anything to even ease her mind a little bit, straightened himself and positively responded. Of course. I will run back with all my might. Good, I will leave that to you then. Renner smiled just as she normally would. Before Climb stepped out of the room, he noticed that Ramposa 3 had passed a few potions to Renner. One could imagine what those were. Climb lowered his head and exited the room. He ran towards the hidden passageways. Afterwards, he used those passageways to enter the capital. It felt surreal. It was as though every inhabitant of the capital had disappeared. That was how silent it was. It was then when he heard the roar of some giant beast, but from his current position, he could not figure out what that was. The capital was vast. If he did not have the vantage point of the castle or the city walls, it would be difficult for him to figure out what was going on. However, to the current Climb, that was not necessary. All he had to do was run full speed towards the warehouse. He did not run into anybody before he reached his destination. This was an urgent matter, but this place was quite far away. In addition to how cautious he had been on his way here, he had spent quite a bit of time on the road. The warehouse was not as big as he had imagined. Climb got near the door and noticed that it was not locked. He returned the bell he had prepared back into his bag and snuck in. Nothing was stored in this warehouse, it was empty. The smell of dust carpeted his face. There were no light fixtures, and the windows were shut, so it was terribly dark inside. There were, however, rays of light that fell through some cracks, so it was not entirely dark. Climb walked through the entrance and held his breath. He concentrated on the sounds that came from the outside. He confirmed that there were not any sounds coming towards the warehouse, and walked towards the wall opposite to him as he had been instructed to. There were many empty shelves there. He found the third shelf from the right and forcefully pushed it. At first, nothing happened, but after he applied more force gradually, a click could be heard. The shelf no longer resisted his push and swung open like a door. It was totally dark inside, a room without windows. Climb put on his helmet. With its power, he could make out his surroundings. In the empty room, on the floor, was a handle-like protrusion. Upon raising that handle, a spiral staircase downwards was revealed. At the bottom of the short staircase was a small room with a single shelf. It was equally empty as the rest, nothing of substance was on it. The dust that had built up in the room formed a thick layer that covered everything. He placed the royal treasures there. After that, his mission was complete. Climb returned to the surface and exited the warehouse. He had to run back at full speed now. He looked back towards the castle and could not help but mutter, "Heh." The castle was snow-white. Thick walls surrounded the castle, but they were painted white too. Light shone on it reflected off brilliantly. To a third party, it must have been a beautiful sight, but as one of its residents, this was an urgent situation. "Ah. Gee great, you weren't squished, it would be dangerous for you to stay here you know." He heard a child's voice next to him. He looked towards where the voice came from. Atop the warehouse was a girl who was looking down at him.
In her hands was a black staff. Her skin tone was dark. She was probably of the race known as Dark Elves. You are. This place is scheduled for demolition, so, because you might get caught up in it, it would be better for you to leave here quickly, okay? Now that she had said that, he understood. This girl was undoubtedly from the Sorcerer's Kingdom. His hands, reaching to unsheath his sword, stopped itself. While she did not appear to be strong, it would not be possible for her to have made her way here alone. It would be dangerous to treat her as a simple girl. Although he might win this fight, if he were to cause a disturbance here and cause the Sorcerer's Kingdom's undead to gather around, he would not be able to return to Renner's side. His duty was not to defeat the enemy, but to serve by her side. Plus, had Renner not repeatedly warned him about this? He wanted to look back at the warehouse, but managed to quell the urge. Since he could not kill her to silence her, he should try his best not to rouse her suspicion. Climb turned his back on the girl and ran. Compared to his fear of receiving an attack from the rear, his desire to return to Renner as soon as possible was much stronger. Climb began to run. The moment he turned a corner, he heard the sound of buildings collapsing. He had to kill the urge to check what was going on. The attack he was watching out for never happened. Climb arrived safely at the entrance to the passageways. While he checked if he was being followed, Climb noticed the plumes of smoke rising up to the skies. The capital is on fire. Because of the houses blocking his line of sight, he could not confirm where the smoke was coming from, but he was certain that it was from more than a couple of sources. So that girl was not part of the vanguard, but a sizable contingent of the Sorcerer's Kingdom's army had already made their way in and were pillaging the city. So why could he not hear any screams? Climb ignored the questions that arose in him. He did not have time to waste on these questions. He had to return to Renner's side and report that he had completed his mission. After that, he could remain by her side until the end. Climb ran through the passageway and returned to the palace. Inside the palace, it was quiet and calm. He could not understand why. Previously, the castle appeared to have frozen over. That was undeniably the result of some form of attack by the Sorcerer's Kingdom. If that was the case, while there might not be many left, there should still be a few knights remaining to defend the place. Even though this place was far away from the knight's defensive lines, he should still be able to hear some sort of noise, even if it was just the sound of a sword clashing against something. Speaking of which, it's even quieter than before. Compared to before, the silence became even more uncomfortable. Never mind the palace, the loneliness he felt right now was like if he was the last man in this world. Climb intentionally ran with heavier steps to make more noise, as he made his way to the king's room. Perhaps he should have followed protocol in how he opened the door, but Climb did not care anymore. He opened the door with all his might. No one was there. He looked around. He could neither find Renner nor Rampasa III. The king's room was connected to another room, perhaps they were there. Just as Climb was about to cross the threshold, he noticed that there was a piece of paper on the table. It was the same type of paper Renner had used to draw the map. He picked it up and looked at it. It was Renner's familiar handwriting, instructions for him to go to the throne room. The next moment, Climb had run out of the room. As Climb got close to the throne room, he slowed down. The corridor to the throne room was filled with multiple figures on both sides, none of which he had seen before in the palace. Their faces were pale white, women who could not possibly be human. They had to be the Sorcerer King's subordinates. They did not seem to be antagonizing Climb, who had run at them. Well, no, it was more like they were not interested in him at all. Should he unsheath, or should he not? Climb could not make up his mind. One of the women spoke. "Please enter, last human of this court." After she said that, she shut her mouth in a disinterested manner. He had a bad feeling about what she had said. A chill was sent down Climb's spine. Climb ran between the women towards the throne room. In the subsequent moment, so much information flooded his brain that he had a sensory overload. Sat upon the throne was not Rampasa III, but a skeletal monster that radiated overwhelming pressure, the Sorcerer King Ainzulgaun. To his left and right was a man with a long tail, the Prime Minister of the Sorcerer's Kingdom, Albedo, and an insectoid monster that looked like it was made out of ice.